served as pastor. Joining us now is Reverend Warnock. He's the senior pastor at Ebenezer Baptist Church, who will be delivering the eulogy today. He is also a Democratic candidate for U.S. Senate, and we will get into that in a moment. But Reverend Warnock, it's great to have you here with us this morning. Can you share with us what you plan to say in this eulogy today?
Good morning, Allison. It's great to be with you. Sorry that it's on such a somber occasion. As I kissed my little daughter this morning, I thought about the children of Rashard Brooks. I've spent a lot of time with them over the last few days. I remember spending just a little time the other day with his 8-year-old daughter. Think about this young girl who earlier that day had celebrated her birthday party with her father. And from now on, her birthday will always be associated with his dying day. That's an unspeakable loss that these children have to come to terms with along with the rest of the family. And so my primary responsibility this later today is to walk with this family as they walk through the valley of the shadow of death. Tomorrow we will raise the issues concerning this case, and we'll talk a little bit about that today. But it's important for us to be present with this family as they deal with this unspeakable loss. So I hope to shed some light on his humanity and connect it to this larger problem in America, in which we are the incarceration capital of the world. And I submit that as long as we are committed to this problem of mass incarceration, we'll continue to see these escalations on the street, which literally lead to death.
In fact, I have heard you say that you have gotten far too much practice with funerals like this.
That's right. Somebody asked me a few weeks ago, what is it like to stand in the pulpit of Martin Luther King Jr. and preach after the tragic death of George Floyd? And tragically, I have way too much practice doing this. It was like the Sunday I preached after the death of Trayvon Martin, after the death of Michael Brown, Sandra Bland, Tatiana Jefferson, and the list goes on and on, Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor. And so I'm concerned that we've become too accustomed to Black death in this country. And we've got to take seriously this virus of racism that we're fighting. We're fighting two pandemics in America. We're dealing with COVID-19 and what I also call COVID-16-19, the day some 20 slaves arrived on the shores of Jamestown, Virginia. That virus mutated into Jim Crow segregation, and now it's mutated into mass incarceration. And until we come to terms with that, we're going to find ourselves tragically here over and over again. The good news is that there is a massive coalition of conscience pouring out onto American streets, people of all races saying America is better than this, and we can indeed live up to the ideal of the American promise, equal protection under the law. And may we use this moment, this moral moment, to create a transformational moment that makes life safer and better for all of our children.
So you do see this as an inflection point. I mean, after that tragic litany of funerals and eulogies and sermons that you've talked about, do you think this is the moment?
Oh, clearly there's something happening in America. Something has shaken the core of this country. You see it in the eyes of people who are willing to pour out into the streets in the midst of a pandemic, knowing in some ways you assume some risk of your own life. But I think when people saw the tragic death of George Floyd, saying over and over again, "I can't breathe, I can't breathe," that it struck a nerve in the hearts of just ordinary, decent people. And indeed, this needs to be a transformational moment. George Floyd, like Eric Garner, was killed in broad daylight by those sworn to protect for $20, in Eric Garner's case, for loose cigarettes. Meanwhile, Wall Street bankers gambled with home mortgages and literally pushed the economy to the brink, almost over the cliff. Eric Garner and George Floyd were executed on the spot. No Wall Street banker went to jail. There's something fundamentally wrong about that. We need a revolution of values. We need to reimagine in this moment what it means for us to be one people in covenant with one another.
Okay, so that leads us to your race for U.S. Senate. man of the cloth, politician. You know, some people think that those are not necessarily a likely match. So why are you running for Senate?
If folks say to me, Pastor, you're going into the swamp, well, I'm going to put on all of my scuba gear and make sure that we bring the best of the community to this process. Listen, I've spent my whole life engaged in the work of service, and it's really driven by my own biography. I grew up in public housing down in Savannah, Georgia. I know what it's like to be walked through a grocery store as a teenager, accused of shoplifting because I was walking while black in a grocery store. I know that humiliation, I know that pain, and somehow I made it out of public housing, the first college graduate in my family, was able to get a college degree and go on and earn 4 degrees, a PhD degree. I'm running because it's harder now for children who grew up in families or growing up in families like mine than it was for me all of those years ago. I'm running because too many of our children have to mortgage their future in order to have a future, and workers need a living wage. And in a state like Georgia and all across the country, people need access to health care. I think people have seen enough of this incestuous relationship between political backrooms and corporate boardrooms. I think this is a moral moment in America. We need moral voices. And yes, I think the Senate could use a pastor.
Reverend Raphael Warnock will be watching today. Thank you very much for taking time this morning to be on New Day.
Thank you.
John.